Selecting the proper seam allowances is as easy as reading your pattern and measuring out to find which line to follow. So if your pattern says a 1/2 inch seam allowance, put your little measuring tool next to a 1/2 inch, and then you know which line that you want to guide your fabric along to keep that perfectly even. So 5/8, 3/8, a 1/4 inch would actually be, if you get a 1/4 inch foot, that's always the best because your foot is wider than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So for you quilters out there, this is not the edge of the foot that you want to follow for that 1/4 inch seam allowance. It'll be too big. So here's another thing that you have with your machine is you have a seam guide, and this will just fit into the back. There's just a, kind of right at the top, there's a black spring. You're going to have to force that in pretty tight. And then what's nice is once it goes in, you can set that to be next to one of the lines you're following. And then that way, when you go to sew, all you have to do is put your fabric right up against the guide, and that will keep, it's like training wheels. Keeps you perfectly even for every time you go and sew. And then if you need to do multiple lines, like maybe you're doing some quilting or some decorative stitches, you can use the seam guide, here we go, as a place to keep this. Instead of having to draw every single line you're going to sew, you only have to draw one. And then that way you can just put the guide down the previous line and then keep going for perfect stitching every time. See how we'll just move that right over, and now we'll get ready to sew our 3rd line.